The invitation had arrived quietly, a sleek white envelope embossed with gold, hand-delivered to Burkina Faso's embassy in Washington, D.C. It was from ABC's The View, inviting President Ibrahim Traoré to appear on a special live political segment in June 2025. No African head of state had ever been on The View. At first, his team hesitated. The show was bold, loud, sometimes messy, but Traoré didn't blink. "Let them hear what America has silenced," he said. The decision shocked everyone. Social media exploded with debate. Was he trying to provoke? Why The View? Why now? In the days leading up to the show, the studio was quietly fortified. Security was tripled. Anonymous threats arrived, targeting Traoré. Protesters, both supportive and furious, gathered in Manhattan, holding signs that read, "Africa rises," and "He's not welcome here." Backstage that morning, the mood was heavy. Whoopi Goldberg sat in her dressing room in silence, staring at her own reflection. Her team had warned her not to go too far. But Whoopi was Whoopi. And Traoré? He didn't come to play safe. He came to say what no African had ever said, on American soil, live, uncensored. The show opened with extra tension in the air. Sunny Hostin welcomed the audience. Joy Behar cracked a joke. The laughter was short-lived. Then the moment arrived. Cameras cut to the entrance. President Ibrahim Traoré stepped into the studio in a deep green Sahelian tunic, hands behind his back. The room clapped politely, but you could feel the unease. Even viewers at home could sense it. He didn't smile. He simply nodded and took his seat. Whoopi leaned in. "We're honored you joined us, Mr. President." "I'm not here for honors," he replied calmly. "I'm here for truth." A beat of silence. Sunny tried to shift the mood. "Let's talk about Africa's growth. Your country has rejected Western aid, Western troops, even Western banks. And yet," Traoré interrupted gently, "we are still standing, stronger." Then came Whoopi's moment. With a sharp breath, she turned to him. "President Traoré, America has always stood for freedom for black people, around the world." The air froze. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Traoré turned, slowly, and with calm fire in his eyes, he said, "You lied to black America, and you keep lying." Gasps. A woman in the audience dropped her phone. Whoopi's face darkened. She reached for her mic, and the world held its breath. It was the silence that struck first. The audience, the co-hosts, the cameramen, no one moved. Traoré sat still, his hands folded. He hadn't raised his voice, he hadn't flinched. But his words were fire. "You lied to black America." Whoopi sat frozen for a second, blinking rapidly. Her lips tightened. "Excuse me," she asked, her voice cracking ever so slightly. Traoré didn't look away. "You told them this country was freedom. You gave them flags, songs, holidays. But when they begged for justice, you gave them bullets and broken promises." The crowd gasped again. One of the producers could be heard whispering frantically into a headset off camera. Whoopi leaned forward, anger flashing in her eyes. "You're on American television. You better watch." "I watched George Floyd die on camera," Traoré cut in, voice steady. "You still call that freedom?" Something broke in Whoopi's expression. Her shoulders sagged. She slowly removed her microphone. "I'm done," she whispered. And then she stood. Without a word, she walked off the stage, past stunned co-hosts, past a silent audience. The cameras caught it all. The View had never seen anything like it. Within minutes, Traoré on The View and Whoopi walks were trending. Within hours, the internet was crying, screaming, divided. And Traoré, he just sat there, as if he'd only just begun. The walk-off clip hit TikTok first. Someone from the audience had recorded it from a side angle, shaky, raw, the kind of video that gets replayed 1,000 times in a day. Within 20 minutes, it had over 3 million views. Whoopi's final words. Traoré's stillness. The line, "You still call that freedom?" Then came the reactions. Black creators cried in duets. No one's ever said it that clear on US TV. Veterans of the civil rights movement reposted it with captions like, "That man speaks Malcolm's truth." But others raged. Disrespectful to America. Who is he to come here and talk down to us? CNN called it a diplomatic shockwave. Fox News demanded an apology. Trevor Noah tweeted just 3 words. He's not wrong. By midnight, Traoré's name had crossed into every continent's trending list, and inside his Manhattan hotel suite, Ibrahim sat alone, watching the firestorm unfold, silent, pained. He didn't enjoy it. He hadn't wanted applause. He wanted reckoning. The next morning, a phone call came. "I'm a teacher. Public school. Harlem. I need to speak to President Traoré." His aide hesitated. "May I ask why?" The woman's voice cracked. "My students saw the clip. Some of them cried. They've never heard an African leader speak for them. Not like that." Traoré took the call. She told him about her classroom, how her 12-year-old sat in silence after watching him, how one boy whispered, "So we're not crazy for feeling forgotten?" He was quiet on the other end. Then he said, "I want to meet them." 2 hours later, under a fake name and light security, Ibrahim Traoré entered a small public school in Harlem. 20 kids, all black, all quiet. He pulled a chair into their circle. "You're not crazy," he told them. "You've just been lied to." A girl raised her hand, timid. "Do you believe in America at all?" Traoré paused. "I believe in the power of truth. If America chooses truth, maybe." And then he cried. The president of Burkina Faso, crying softly in front of 12-year-olds. One of them stood, then another. They hugged him. While the president was in Harlem, the backlash hit its peak. The White House released a tight statement. "We respect freedom of speech, but mutual respect is also key to diplomacy." Conservative anchors called Traoré a foreign agitator. Talk shows debated whether he should be expelled from U.S. soil. Some demanded an apology to Whoopi, but a different America was rising. In Chicago, students marched with signs, "He spoke for us." In Oakland, churches rang bells and read his words aloud like scripture. But it was a clip from Mississippi that broke hearts, an 86-year-old black veteran, in tears on camera. "We fought for a flag that never fought for us. That man, Traoré, he just said what I didn't have the strength to say back then." The video reached 14 million views in 24 hours. That night, back in his hotel, Traoré sat with a folded piece of paper. It was from one of the Harlem students. On it, written in red crayon, "Thank you for not being afraid, because now I'm not afraid either." He placed it in his inner pocket, right next to his country's flag. Backstage at The View, things were falling apart. Producers were scrambling. Advertisers were panicking. And Joy Behar, who had sat silently through the entire confrontation, had locked herself in her dressing room. She didn't go home. She sat on the small leather couch, hands trembling, watching the replay on her phone for the 10th time. "You told them this country was freedom, but you gave them bullets and broken promises." The words echoed louder every time. She thought about a lunch she had with James Baldwin decades ago. His anger, his sorrow, his warnings. She hadn't listened then. And now, sitting alone, Joy began to cry. The kind of cry that doesn't come from offense or shame, but from realizing you stood silent while others were choking. She picked up her phone and dialed. "Get me Traoré's team," she said. The producer on the other end froze. "Joy, why?" "I need to say something, not on the show, just to him." That night she wrote a letter. She didn't sleep. She didn't know if he'd read it. But for the first time in her long career, she felt small, in a good way. The President of the United States had been briefed 3 times. By now, the Traoré situation was considered a global image issue. Some aides wanted the White House to release a statement distancing itself further. Some wanted to remind Africa who funds who. But there was one advisor, an old black civil rights activist, who had joined the administration late in life, who said nothing in those meetings. Until he finally stood. I watched Dr. King get buried. I watched Malcolm get smeared. And now y'all want to punish this man for telling the truth. Silence. The advisor reached into his coat and dropped something on the table. It was a newspaper clipping. 1968. Headline: King called traitor for Vietnam comments. Then he said, "If you punish Traoré, you punish every truth Black Americans have ever tried to tell this country." The room fell quiet. That night, the president didn't sleep. Instead, he watched the Harlem classroom clip. Watched those children hug Traoré like a long-lost father. Watched the man cry. And for the first time since he took office, he asked himself, have I been listening or just managing? 3 days after the interview, Traoré left his hotel without telling his team. He wanted air, no cameras, no pressure. So he walked, alone, hoodie up, just another tall black man in the crowd. He wandered into a small park in Brooklyn and sat beside an old man on a bench. The man glanced at him, then chuckled. "You look like that president fella on TV." Traoré smiled gently. "I get that a lot." They sat in silence for a few minutes. Then the old man said, "You made Whoopi walk off. Never seen that in all my years." "Did that upset you?" Traoré asked. "No," the man whispered. "I just wish someone said it sooner. Before my brother got shot in '68. Before my nephew OD'd trying to forget what this country did to him." He turned to look Traoré in the eyes. "Thank you. Not for the words, but for surviving long enough to say them." Traoré felt his throat tighten. He reached into his coat and pulled out the crayon letter from Harlem, showed it to the old man, and the two of them wept silently. One for the past, one for the future. News of the interview had reached Ouagadougou. In the capital of Burkina Faso, people gathered around radios and TVs, watching the clips like gospel. Crowds flooded the university square, chanting Traoré's name, but not everyone was pleased. Foreign embassies sent stern inquiries. Western diplomats canceled meetings. Aid contracts were under review. Inside the presidential compound, Traoré's chief of staff paced nervously. "Sir, we're risking sanctions. They're calling you a media terrorist." Traoré remained calm, but his eyes showed a flicker of sadness. "Did we come this far just to beg again?" "No, sir, but we need food. We need fuel. You know that." Traoré turned to the window and watched the people in the streets waving homemade flags. "You think they want food from a hand that's been on their neck for decades?" Silence. He held up the red crayon letter again. "This child gave me more truth than 10 presidents ever did." At that moment, a soldier entered with an urgent message. The African Union wanted to meet. Privately. No cameras. No press. The old alliances were shifting. Africa was watching. And the question whispered in the wind. Would they stand with him or leave him alone? 5 days later, The View returned live with an empty chair. Whoopi was still off. Joy Behar looked straight into the camera. "We never expected this," she said quietly. "We wanted a conversation. We got a wake-up call." Sunny Hostin cleared her throat. "Many of you wrote in, black viewers especially, saying you felt seen for the first time. That shouldn't take a president from Burkina Faso." The audience clapped softly, unsure. Then Joy continued. "I wrote President Traoré a letter, I don't know if he read it, but I want to say something to all of you." She paused, took a breath. If truth feels like an attack, maybe it's because we built comfort on someone else's silence. Gasps, then applause. Online, reactions were mixed again. Some called it redemption. Others said it was too little, too late. But one clip began circulating. Joy, with tears in her voice, saying, "Black America doesn't need to be saved. It needs to be believed." That line, "believed," went viral. By midnight, young artists had turned it into graffiti, shirts, TikToks, even protest banners. Across cities, 3 words were everywhere: "Believe Black America." And for the first time, the view felt changed. A week after walking off, Whoopi reappeared, not on TV. She was spotted at the Schomburg Center in Harlem, sitting quietly in the back row of a forum on African American history. She wore no makeup, no cameras followed her. A young woman recognized her, whispered, "Why are you here?" Whoopi looked at the stage, then down at her lap. "Because I thought I knew everything, and then I realized I didn't." That night, she sent a private message to Traoré's team. Just 2 sentences. "I was wrong. Thank you for telling the truth, even when I couldn't hear it." No press release, no public apology. But somehow, it meant more. The next morning, Traoré's team posted an image on his official page. It showed the Harlem kids in a circle, holding hands. And underneath it, one caption: "Healing begins where pride ends." Within 24 hours, it had 30 million likes. And on the streets of Atlanta, Oakland, Lagos, London, murals began to appear. Not of celebrities, not of politicians, but of a president crying in a classroom, and a TV host walking off to find herself again. 10 days after the view, Ibrahim Traoré walked into a discreet meeting room at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa. 12 African presidents were present. Not a single media outlet was allowed in. This was not for the cameras. A veteran president from East Africa leaned forward. "You've stirred the West," he said, half worried, half admiring. "You stood up in their house and told them the truth. That's dangerous." Traoré didn't blink. Silence was more dangerous. Another president known for walking the middle path asked, "What's your end game, Ibrahim? Revolution? Isolation?" Traoré pulled out the red crayon letter from his pocket again. It was now slightly torn at the edges, soft from being held often. "My endgame is that this child never has to thank a foreign leader for defending her dignity. She should hear it from her own." The room fell still. Then the youngest president there, the new leader of a Southern African nation, spoke. "Maybe the world isn't ready for your truth, but Africa is." And for the first time in decades, the AU passed a private resolution, a declaration of cultural sovereignty. They wouldn't announce it yet, but a continent was beginning to rise from its knees. Back in New York, as the world buzzed around him, Traoré asked for something simple. "Can I visit the Bronx?" His security team protested, but he insisted, not for politics, not for press, but for a woman named Mama Eliza, his late mother's childhood friend, who had moved to America during the 1980s. She had raised kids here, worked 3 jobs, lost her husband to the prison system, buried a son who died from police brutality. And yet, when Traoré stepped into her small apartment, she hugged him like he was her own. "You look just like your mother," she whispered. They sat for hours, no cameras, no bodyguards in the room, just jollof rice and tears. She showed him a photo, his mother at 19, fists in the air during a protest in Ouagadougou. She believed Africa would rise again. She always said you'd be the one. He looked down, voice trembling. "I hope I haven't made her ashamed." Mama Eliza grabbed his hand. No child who speaks the truth could ever shame his mother. That night, he slept in that small apartment, on a couch older than him. and for once, he rested. 3 weeks after the interview, Traoré made an unannounced stop before leaving America. He returned to that same Harlem school. This time, the children were prepared. They wore homemade pins with Burkina Faso's flag. They had questions, stories, even tears. But one boy, quiet, thin, with deep eyes, waited until the very end. He walked up to Traoré and handed him a piece of cloth. It was an American flag, small, folded. Traoré looked at it with hesitation. Then the boy whispered, "I don't want this anymore. It never protected me." Traoré knelt, eye level with him. "What do you want instead?" The boy reached into his backpack and pulled out a handmade Burkina Faso flag. "I want this. I want to belong to someone who fights for me." Traoré's eyes welled up. Slowly, he reached out, took both flags, and wrapped them together. He looked the boy in the eyes and said, "Then let me carry them both until they stop fighting each other." The boy smiled, and for a moment, the weight of two nations sat in Traoré's arms, not as enemies, but as a promise. Just before dawn, Traoré's team posted a scanned image to social media. It was handwritten, bare, powerful, a letter from Ibrahim Traoré to the people of America. It read, "To the children who saw themselves in me, to the elders who waited decades to hear those words, and even to those who called me a threat, I did not come to shame your country. I came to hold a mirror to it. I came because truth is not war. Truth is rescue. My ancestors were stolen. My brothers were broken. And still, I come with my heart open. I hope you do the same." By 7 a.m., Ibrahim Traoré letter was the #1 trending topic on Earth. Talk shows paused their usual noise. Newspapers printed the full letter on their front pages. Even school children began writing their own letters back. One girl in Baltimore wrote, "You're the first president who made me feel black isn't a burden." One boy in Texas wrote, "I showed my father your video. We haven't spoken in a year. Last night we cried together. Truth had crossed oceans, and it was changing people." On the morning of his departure, JFK Airport was flooded with cameras, officials, and hundreds of supporters chanting his name. But Traoré didn't head straight for his plane. Instead, he stepped up to a small podium placed just outside the terminal. No teleprompter, no prepared remarks, just raw, shaking truth. "I came here expecting resistance. I found children who carry pain like grown men. I found elders who lived entire lives asking, 'Do they see me?' And I found something even deeper, a country that wants to believe in its goodness, but doesn't know how to face its guilt." He took out the red crayon letter again, creased, soft, but still legible. "This is why I came." He looked out at the crowd, some crying, some stunned. "Let no child, black or otherwise, ever grow up thinking they are invisible. Let no nation ever rise by burying another. Let no truth be called a threat just because it is uncomfortable." He stepped back. No anthem, no handshakes, only thunderous applause, and silence wrapped in tears. He boarded the plane and left behind a nation forever changed. 3 days later, a video was posted on Traoré's official page. No music, no edits, just a black screen that slowly faded into a scene. Traoré, in a simple white shirt, sitting under a tree in Burkina Faso. A small crowd of villagers surrounded him, children, farmers, elders. He was reading letters aloud, some from Harlem, some from D.C., some from towns he never visited, from people he never met. His voice cracked more than once. Then he looked at the camera, direct, intimate. "I spoke because I remembered my mother's tears. I spoke because I met your children. But I'm not the voice of a continent. I'm just proof that truth still echoes when spoken with love." He paused, then held up the 2 folded flags
the American and the Burkinabe, tied together. The future belongs to the children who can hold both these flags and still feel free. If this story made you cry, if your heart broke open, if you finally felt seen, subscribe, like, and tell us in the comments. What truth have you waited your whole life to hear spoken out loud?